Welcome to my channel. Here is a sneak peek of the watercolor painting I'll be completing today using the Schmincke Seascape set, and it's also the set that I will be swatching and talking about and giving a bit of a review on. Here it is. It's the Schmincke Seascape set. It is 12 half pans and it's in this metal tin. On the back it says that the colors are titanium opaque white, heliocerulean, Payne's gray bluish, French ultramarine, ice blue, cobalt cerulean, indigo, cobalt blue light, cobalt azure, Prussian blue, dark blue, and phthalo sapphire blue. And it is in this cardboard packaging on the outside, just gives all the information. And on the inside, the palette itself is this shiny metallic silver. It has the thumb ring on the back as well as those little buttons to sit straight on. And on the front, it has the logo and these decorative ridges. The decorative ridges also carry through to the inside in the mixing portion of the palette, which I'm not sure how I feel about that. Would it get in the way? Is it convenient for you if you use it? I know it won't affect me because I primarily use porcelain mixing palettes, so I won't use this one so much. Even when traveling, I just pack a tiny porcelain palette with me or a dish. And then this came with this insert, and it even tells you how to use a color chart, which is fun that it includes those instructions. So you can swatch out your colors on that, or in this case, I'm going to be using real watercolor paper. I'm really bad at opening and keeping it all on camera, so I'm just going to zoom right through this part. So right now I am just taking out the pans to tighten it up because when I put them back in, I hadn't tightened the metal first, so they were sliding around a bit too much. So I'm just going to tighten it and then put it back in. Also worth noting is, as you can see on the left, the ridges of this palette are not folded. So that means it can be sharp, and you do have to be careful around it not to slice yourself or hurt yourself in any way on those unfolded palettes. I do prefer the folded ones, but I'm not that clumsy that I've ever cut myself, so I don't mind too bad that it's not. I've sped it up again. That little piece of paper on the right, that one, is the one that's going to go inside the palette, and I keep all my little tiny color swatches on it so that I know what is within the palette. I tape it to the inside. But for this video, I have a larger piece of paper. It's the Canson Moulin de Roy paper that I'm writing down all the color names on, and then I can swatch larger so that you can get a better view of what the colors look like and how they behave on the paper. Slowing it down now from 8 times the speed to 2 times the speed of real time, I am showing you how I pick up the pigment so easily. It is smooth and buttery and easy to lift with just a bit of water. You don't have to spray and wait, you can get right to it. The titanium white looks smudged with gray there. That's just the ink from my pen that I used. It hadn't completely dried when I got started. I was too excited, but I don't see it happening with the rest, so don't worry about that. Next was the ice blue, which is a phthalo blue with white added, followed by cobalt azure, which is a genuine cobalt pigment, soft and gorgeously granulating. Hopefully you can see it there. Then heliocerulean is the one I just finished up, and it is a phthalo blue pigment, followed by cobalt cerulean, which is a genuine cobalt pigment. And then on to Prussian blue, which is that PB27. It is not a fugitive pigment technically, but it can fade and then recover its value when it's kept in the shade for a bit, which is a weird property that Prussian blue has. Next is Payne's gray bluish, and I am a sucker for Payne's grays. I love them so much. This one is no exception. It's beautiful, dark, and moody, and it looks like it has a bit of granulation in there too. I'm not sure from what, because it has a phthalo and a black in it, maybe from that PB6 black. Next is indigo. It is another favorite. Let's see if it's the real one that fades. I just Googled it, and it is a blend of 2 pigments, and one of them is the genuine indigo PB66. It is not light fast, so that one only has a light fast rating of 2 out of 5, just to be aware of that one. This is dark blue, which is what they've named their PB60. So it's really an Indanthrene or Indanthrone blue pigment. I love this color, although it does usually have quite a drying shift. So we'll see if this one has the same issue happening. French ultramarine is an ultramarine pigment, and it is beautifully granulating. I love the granulation in this one. It would be fun in mixtures. Another genuine cobalt, a cobalt blue light, followed by a phthalo sapphire, which is another phthalo pigment. That means that there are 3 of them in this set. There is the heliocerulean is a phthalo, the phthalo sapphire, and then there's a mixture, which is the ice blue, a phthalo, and a white. In this set, there are also 1, 2, 3 cobalts, which are expensive colors, expensive pigments if you want to buy them on their own. So it's really nice that they're included in this set. And here with the closer look, you can see that the Payne's Gray Blue is dried quite evenly. It doesn't have that same granulating look that it did when it was freshly put down. The dark blue, that Indanthrene blue, is shifting slightly lighter. It's not too bad of a drying shift. Now I'm just going to play with the paint and see which colors push, which ones pull, and play around with their personalities. The cobalt blue light in that upper right corner is interesting because it kind of behaved like an alcohol drop, how it just stayed in that circular dot with the rim around it. That's kind of neat and would be fun to play with. The darker ones, that indigo and those Payne's Gray, they're nice and pushy and push the other colors around and flow in the water. The French ultramarine, I'm noticing, does that as well. And the lighter cobalt tends to stay put a bit more and show off that granulation. So I had fun with this, just seeing how they move, how they work. And then I designed my next art piece that I would use these blues for. For this piece, I wanted to piggyback on another painting that I've done before, which was a sea turtle kind of flying or bursting out of these maple leaves, and it's reds and oranges, and it's still one of my favorite pieces. I'll link it below so you can see the one I'm talking about. I wanted to do a few more, maybe in different colors with different themes. So this one is going to be all blue, obviously with the Seascape palette. And then I figured I could do this turtle with some Hawaiian flowers. So he's kind of in a blue Hawaiian theme. I've sketched him, and then I painted my watercolor, sorry, not painted, taped my watercolor paper to the board to prevent some of the warping when I do these initial washes. I like to paint wet and wet, and I like to paint in layers, and that is aggressive and a little bit tough on paper, so it's important that I tape that down. For the painting, I want to show enough that you get an idea of my process, but it's not going to be a full tutorial. I'll fast forward some parts, pause in some parts, maybe explain what I'm doing here and there, but mostly this is just to get a feel for the paints, test them out. And here I go. The first thing that I'm doing is painting a fun, loose, splashy background. I love to do this. Just let the paint do what it wants to do, be a bit loose and free, not really have a plan in that initial stage. I do know that I don't want to go too dark, so I'm keeping it mid to light tones, and I know that it'll shift a bit as it dries, especially when it is this wet. I did add a bit too much water. I didn't want it to create backwashes, so what I'm doing right now is using a drier brush to soak up some of that excess water around the edges there. So you can see where it's pooled heavily. I don't want it to back run. I want it to stay where it is, not cauliflower too much. At this point, I'm also noticing that the tape that I've used is not staying down at all, and I don't want the paint running under as I go with this portrait, so I'm going to take a minute and tape it down really well. Once I'm done retaping the paper to the board, I'm going to take a break and let it dry all the way before I do my next layer. If I try to do my next layer now, it'll smudge right in and I won't get those clean lines that I'm looking for. So now I've added a base sketch. I have added some flowers. This is the first layer of my negative painting that I want to paint around. I've also used a bit of masking fluid on those parts that appear darker right now. That's actually blue masking fluid. It's from the, I don't know what that's called, the pollen part of the flower sticking out is what I've masked off, just because it's such a tiny area that would be difficult to paint around. Working smart. This layer is intentionally darker than the first layer so that I can create some contrast. I also dropped the water in there to make blooms on purpose, just for some fun texture, adding some interest in that background. I will warn you now that I did miss recording the second half of this painting, so it's gonna jump quite drastically from first layer to a middle layer to completely done. Again, this isn't a tutorial, but I did want to show you a glimpse of my process and how the paints behaved in that process. For me, I use a lot of layers and these worked really nicely. Besides that ice blue, I think the ice blue behaves more of a gouache because it has the white in it. It will make the colors milky and is harder to layer. So it's good for a last layer maybe, or areas that you want to stay lighter. I tried to use a bit of every blue from the palette in this painting, so although it's not always obvious, they are all in there. Right now I'm going in with some of the Payne's Gray and Indigo mixed together in different variations to get the darkest darks of this turtle and add some of those detailed pieces so that I know where the darkest values are. That really helps me to not be shy and get in there and get dark in other areas as well. I also wanted to keep in mind the focal point of this painting, so it's the area that I want to have the most contrast. Now, what do I think of this palette overall? Well, these paints are professional artist grade paints and they behave like it. They're beautiful, they behave exactly as I would expect them to behave. It's a quality brand, and I do think that they're all amazing. Is it a great palette for a beginner? I would not say that unless you already have a collection or you already have a basic palette, because it's all blue. It's definitely a collector's palette or a specialty palette for someone that loves blue or is filling in some blue gaps in their collection. I think that it is a great piece for that type of thing. Like me, I like to collect a bit and try different things, and I especially love blue. I did feel like painting only in blue was restricting for me. I like to add more variation in color typically, have some pinks or some oranges or purples in there. And I felt like I missed that. So working exclusively in this palette isn't for me, but I do think it is a great addition with other palettes. So in the future, I will use it in combination or pull what I need. Here is the final result, some close up here. I was able to get nice dark tones with the colors included in this palette. I'm really happy with how it turned out. Let me know what you thought of this palette. If you have any questions or comments, I'd love to hear about them below, and please click like and subscribe. It helps this channel grow. Again, here is the final painting scanned and uploaded.